Hi everybody, my name is Matthew Svendsen and this is my final presentation for my portfolio and a summation of what I have learned in the Adult Education and Training Masters for Colorado State. So let's get started. A little bit about me. My name is Matthew Svendsen, as I had previously mentioned. I have a wife and a 15-month-old son. My family means the world to me, and we actually just moved into a new home. I am hopefully going to be starting a new job shortly through my work in the finance industry, and I will talk a little bit more about that as the presentation goes on. So a quick synopsis or little bit on my philosophy of education and teaching. A lot of what I believe it relates to where I work, which is within the financial industry, and that is a big part of what I think is a major focus in the financial industry is in relation to experience. I think it means the world to have that experience and that background, to see all of the different things that are capable of happening or might happen or could happen or would happen. Um, Personally, I saw a lot of this happen, excuse me, in 2008 and 2009 with the market crash. There was so much experience in seeing how that played out, what a recovery looks like, what a crash looks like, things of those nature. And being new to the industry at that point in time, it was nice to be able to look to some of the older people at work that had gone through the technology bubble and the crash in 2000, Black Monday from 1987. These people were calm, cool, collected because they had the experience. They've seen things like this before. Maybe not on that scale, but they knew what was happening. They knew how to deal with it. They knew how to calm their clients down. So that experience, I believe, is really unparalleled as far as necessary to what we do in the financial industry. That being said, I believe in leveraging the experience of learners within financial education. I think it's extremely important. I also believe in self-directed learning, a lot of learner-centric styles, because at the end of the day, there really is no substitute for experience and allowing people to use what they already know to teach them something new. So that being said, we can move into some of the things that I have learned throughout my time with the Adult Education and Training Master. So some of the things that I've learned, and I'm not going to dive in completely because there's a more thorough explanation if you go through my portfolio. But a lot of what I've learned is backs up what I already believed. So that being said, we can go into David Kolb's learning an experiential cycle. It's a 4-part cycle, and I really, really connected with this because of my thoughts and beliefs on how important experience is in learning. Kolb supposed that learning happened through experience in 4 parts, and those parts were concrete experience, reflection and observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. Now, he said that there was no need to start at any one particular point. The only thing necessary was to go through all 4 cycles before learning truly took place, which I think is a great way to experience things. So personally, if I look at this and say, okay, I experienced the market crash of 2008, 2009, my first experience with that was that concrete experience. I didn't know what to expect. There was no knowing what to expect. There was very few people that saw that coming. So when it happened, I got a concrete experience in that, and I was able to reflect and observe and see what was happening within the moment. Um, After the recovery started to take place, we all kind of looked back and we were able to talk to each other, those of us in the industry at my workplace and some other industry people that I know, and say, wow, what happened? What was it that we can do? What did we learn? How do we deal with our clients from this point forward? So knowing those things at that point, we were able to kind of take what we learned, put it all together, synthesize all that information, and come back. And in 2012, there was a market correction. The market pulled back again, and people were scared because it was not very far away from one of the largest crashes in market history. So we were able to actively put that into practice, what we had learned, and say, okay, we've been through something like this before. We know what's happening. And it might not be the exact same thing, but we know what this can look like, and we know what can happen. So we've got a better plan to take action this time around. And not everything was perfect, but that's what goes into what Kolb was talking about. Is we can then move into our active experimentation, can move back into a concrete experience. So 2012 wasn't exactly like 2008 and 2009. But we learn from that as well. So we pick up little bits every time that we try something new. And that I think is an important lesson to learn. And it was one of the things that really helped me to kind of validate what I had already experienced in my own life. Now, another thing that I really believe in is self-directed learning. I think it's very important. There are so many things that each person, especially in the financial industry, needs to keep up with for regulation. We've got our the regulations that we need to keep up with, the rules. There's always changing legislation. There can't be one specific thing for each person, and each person has a different skill set or different clients that they deal with. So everyone needs to know different things. And it's my job as an educator in the financial sector to show them where to find the tools to help themselves. I think more importantly than trying to put together one class to encapsulate everyone, when everyone doesn't need all of the information, it's important to show them how to help themselves. And that is, I think, an understated aspect of what it is to be an educator. A lot of people see or view educators as people that just bestow that knowledge. And I look at myself, when I look at myself as an educator, as someone that helps people to help themselves, because I think it's important to understand that how long students or learners are in one particular educational setting is short relative to the rest of their lives. And I'm trying to create lifelong learners, or people that want to help themselves or educate themselves. So if I give them the tools to be able to help themselves and direct their own learning down the line, then I've given them something more than just the education from the time that they were in my classroom. And this falls into Knowles principles, because Malcolm Knowles came up with these 6 principles, originally 4, and later a 5th, and then finally a 6th, about what it is to be an adult learner and the things that fall into that. And the very first principle in that is that adult learners are motivated and self-directed. If we as adults want to learn something, need to learn something, want to know something, we are motivated to get that education, because there's a purpose, there's a final goal. It's not the high school student that says, why do I need to know this? When am I ever going to use algebra? It's generally adults saying, I need to do this for an ultimate goal, which is to further my career, or further an interest of mine, or I know that the ends are going to justify the means, so I want to know this, I want to gain this knowledge. Personally, I went through the adult education and training master's degree because I wanted to further my career. I knew that education was the next step in that in my career path. So here I am. And there's other things that fall into Knoll's principles, I think, that are extremely important to keep my mind directed towards as an educator. Like it says, adult learners bring life experience and knowledge. There are so many experiences in a classroom from all different walks of life, all different people. Like I said, people that had never been through anything like what happened in 2008, 2009, people that have been through several market corrections, several bear markets, recessions, crashes like in 82, 87, 2000. And we need to leverage, or be able to leverage as educators, those experiences, because frankly, as an educator, I haven't been through many of the things that my learners will have been through. So I would be foolish not to use their experience and learning to further the education of everyone in the classroom. We also need to keep our eyes towards the fact that adult learners are goal-oriented. We're not in it simply for the intrinsic aspects of education. While some people are, I would say 99.9% of learners in an adult educational training session at work are there because they know either they have to be, but they'll see some relevancy towards their job, and they want to get that done. They want the final results. So they know that the work is how they get there, the education is how they get there. They need to know that what they do pertains to them, that it's important. And I think that's a very important aspect, to start any educational setting saying, this is how we are going to do this. We can go through and get a goal, get something going. I can say, at the end of this, you will understand how to trade stock in the system that we have at our job. You will need to know this for your work. I'm going to teach you how to do it. And that's a very important thing to adult learners, to know that what they're learning is something that they will be using. There's a practicality and a respect aspect. I think that adult learners, for the most part, are practical. They want to do things in the most efficient way. They want to understand why what's happening is happening. And they need to be respected. I mean, in any adult education setting, you're dealing with adults. You're dealing with people who have earned their respect. They have earned the right to be treated like adults, and know that regardless of whether they are completely educated, they know nothing coming into a classroom, it doesn't matter, because they deserve to be respected. So I think that's one of the things that I'm definitely going to take away, especially with people. When you look at people who have more experience than you in an educational setting, don't look at your position as an educator as a position of power. I believe in a collaborative classroom, especially since much of my philosophy is towards learner-centric styles. So that's a major part of my view as being an educator in the financial sector. So going through my time in adults ed and training masters, I was able to pick up some of the historical aspects of adult ed. One of the things, and it was actually one of my very favorite projects, was the historical report that I did on Benjamin Franklin's Junto. It was incredible to see how many things Benjamin Franklin was able to accomplish with his group, and what they learned, what they did. But it was also, and I speak to this a little bit, so important to me to see how many times he failed and how good he was at learning from those failures and making them work for him, because he failed spectacularly. But he used it. He used those things to become better. Um, and he truly transformed a lot of people's lives. And that goes into what I speak about in the portfolio, which is Mesereau's 10-step process to transformational learning. Now, Mesereau spoke to the fact that transformational learning was something that used education to change people, to change their outlook, their perspective, who they are in their very fabric of their beings. Now, I think, honestly, any education worth its salt makes a valiant and true effort towards being transformational learning. I'm not under the illusion that every time I walk into a classroom I'm going to set the world on fire and change people's lives. However, I absolutely am going to try, because I think that's who we are as educators. There's no reason that we should be in front of a classroom if we're not making that effort to really change what it is that people are understanding about the world. It might be a little more difficult in certain subjects, and finance might be one of those subjects, but it doesn't mean that I won't give it the best effort that I have to say, hey, here's what I have to teach you. And why it's important is because then you can turn around and teach your clients or your community or your family ways to be more financially healthy and do better, bigger things for their lives. And if I reach one person to say, I need to change the way that I look at things because I want nothing but the best for all of those people, so I'm going to soak up this knowledge or dive in, and now I'm going to go off because of this class and direct my own learning to make a bigger difference, then I've done my job. And that's something I think that is a huge goal of any educator. And I think that if any educator has done a good job, they all have those moments throughout time where they can look back and say, this is one time that I've made a difference. And those are the moments that keep each educator going forward. Some more examples of these things. We're getting there. And this froze up on me a little bit. Oh, there we go. For some of the icebreakers. And I speak to the fact that I don't think that icebreakers are necessarily what I originally thought, which was just a way to introduce people and kind of make things easier or make sure everyone knows everyone else's name. I think icebreakers are something that kind of go into Palmer's Courage to Teach. There's a comfort level that's necessary to create a warm and welcoming environment for education, and an icebreaker can do that. A good teacher can do that by laying yourself bare. And I'm not saying you necessarily need to embarrass yourself or sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star because it's your favorite song to do that. But I think things like icebreakers where you can say, hey, let's all understand that we are all in the same boat. We all might be a little bit uncomfortable here, but we want to learn, we want to understand, we want to know, and I want you to feel like you have friends in this classroom and you can be comfortable, because that's a good place to learn. And I think that was one of my most important takeaways from learning about icebreakers, is that especially in finance, there's a lot of stigma to people being rigid and kind of a little bit more stiff-collared, that it's important to understand that we're all in this together, and that there's going to be a good way that we can all kind of hop in, dive in, and learn things together, because it's important to understand that people care, and that people are there with you and in that same boat. So going forward on this, I actually put together a class for my instructional design course on finance education for young adults, because a lot of what I'm looking to do is not simply be a trainer of employees at my firm, but I would like to reach out to the community. I'd like to do things to teach underprivileged adults finance education, to stay away from predatory lending or things that might be financial pitfalls for people. I would love to teach young adults financial education so they get off on the right foot, because starting young, I mean, the most important aspect that anyone in finance is going to tell you is the value of time with your money. So I would love to help young adults get into that and avoid some of those pitfalls, which would be, credit card risk or student loan issues, things like that, starting a Roth IRA early, all of those things. So this is a course that I put together using the Dick and Carey model, and I think it's really a great way to go about any course design. And it doesn't necessarily need to be 100% strictly towards the Dick and Carey model, but I think that model is great because it allows you to evaluate along the process the entire time and to make changes and to say, what am I doing wrong? What can I do better? Which wraps around to Kolb's experiential learning, saying we can always change. We'll experience something, we'll reflect on that, we'll actively experiment with it and change it and tweak it and make it a little bit better. And I think that's an important aspect to hold to. So that being said, I also came up with evaluation plans for that particular course, which are extremely important. As an educator, I feel like it is highly important to come up with evaluation to find out what works, what does not work, what helps, what doesn't help, what's filler, and what's real solid meat in any particular course. There's a lot of different things that I hope to accomplish as an educator in finance. Now, what I'm hoping to do is actually to get into a classroom setting as a trainer for the learning and development team at my work. Some of my goals as an educator, the 5-year plan or program, hopefully will be to get into a position where I have a classroom, I can gain some experience, because I don't think there is any real substitute for actual class time, hours logged. So for the next 5-10 years, I would like to be in a classroom teaching and putting together some courses, mostly in facilitation, but instructional design is something that I'm interested in as well. If nothing else, helping with the instructional design process, if not taking the lead. And then my 10-year plan, I actually would like to go back to school, either to get another master's degree for my MBA, or possibly get a doctorate. That's something that I'm slowly kicking around, especially getting towards the end of the master's degree. It's getting a bit longer and tough, especially with a 15-month-old at home. But it is something that may be in the future for me once I get a little bit further removed from my master's degree. But that's pretty much it. That's what I've learned throughout my time in the adult education and training master's program. I've enjoyed my time. I think that education is something that I really believe in. I want to stress the fact that I would not be getting my master's, especially not being in a role of education yet, if I did not believe in the power of education. I believe that having this degree will help me to get a job, but I also believe that having this degree will help me in my job. And regardless of what happens where I am, I think education is a service And if I end up at some point down the line in the same role that I am in, I don't think there is anything wrong with having a background and knowing how to educate adults, and to understand that dealing with clients or dealing with the community and being a teacher in everyday life is just as important as being a teacher or an educator in a formal environment. Education is a service. It is a powerful tool that I think that we can all use, and it is something that I don't take lightly and have enjoyed learning how to do, learned how to become an educator, and learned that it is a process that will never stop. So that's my presentation, and I thank you all for being an active part of my education, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.